everybody, this is Dylan. We are making my favorite marinara sauce tonight. What that is, for those of you who don't use the term marinara, is it's just a tomato pasta sauce. I don't want to just call it a tomato sauce because tomato sauce is this. It's just tomatoes cooked and milled into a sauce with nothing in it. So we're going to take that sauce and we're going to turn it into something delicious to go with pasta or whatever you want it to go with. This sauce is going to be totally SOS free. For those of you who don't know what that means there is no added sugar, oil, or salt in this recipe. We absolutely never cook with oil because it's terrible for your body. It causes heart disease, high blood pressure, autoimmune disease. It will cause you to be overweight. It is absolutely devoid of all nutrient content, and it's just fat extracted from whole food to taste good. So we use none of that in our cooking. As for salt, we sometimes do add salt at the table. We usually don't cook with salt. The reason that we try to minimize our salt intake is simply because it causes us to overeat. Salt is delicious, so when you add it to things, it causes you to want more of those things than you otherwise would have wanted if the salt wasn't there. So we try to minimize our salt. I know some people watching this have completely eliminated salt from their diets altogether, or at least are doing so for like a 1 month booster to get your taste buds adapted to whole foods that taste really delicious on their own. Sugar is similar to salt in that the sugar itself, if eaten in small amounts, isn't so bad for you, but it can cause you to overeat. It can cause you to crave and be addicted. We usually never cook with added sugar except in the form of whole dates that we add to things like my banana bread, which I have a video of that you should for sure check out. But we don't usually add plain old sugar to things unless it was like a very rare occasion, like if I'm making ice cream for a dinner party or something like that. So yes, this recipe has no added sugar, oil, or salt. Okay, so the basic idea here is that we're going to saute up these various vegetables and then we're going to add the diced tomatoes and the tomato sauce to that and let it reduce, and it's going to be delicious. So any of these other veggies here that I'm using, you don't have to use them. I recommend them, and let me explain here as I go. So a yellow onion, I would not do this recipe without an onion, but if you don't like onion, maybe you could use these other things instead. I don't always do it, but I add a red bell pepper because it gives it a nice sweetness to the sauce without having, some people add sugar to their marinara. I find that a red pepper gives it a really nice sweetness. Mushrooms are optional, but I tend to use, this is a ½ pound of mushrooms that we're going to chop up. Sometimes I use a whole pound for the same recipe. So if I'm making it just a mushroom basil sauce, I'll use a ton of mushrooms, basil, and an onion, and no red pepper, for example. So you can like switch this up any way that you want. I'm using a ½ pound of mushrooms on this one. I'm going to use probably half a dozen cloves of garlic chopped up. I've got 2 sprigs of fresh rosemary that I just chopped out of the garden, and I've got a good cup of basil, fresh basil out of the garden. Now, if you don't have access to rosemary and basil, you can use just an Italian seasoning and use a couple tablespoons of that and find the amount that works for you, so you don't have to have fresh herbs. So that's it. I'm going to use some crushed red pepper, some black pepper. That's really everything that I'm going to use in this recipe. So the first thing I'm going to do is chop all of this up and put it in a bowl, and then we're going to saute it all at once. We're not going to do it in various steps. This should be 1 step chop, 1 step saute, 1 step add the tomato, and then let it reduce and you're done. I don't want to add this, wait 3 minutes, add this, wait 3 minutes. No, this is going to be the simplest marinara you've ever had, and it's going to be just as delicious as the ones that take 6 or 8 different steps. So that's it. We're going to chop this onion. Chopping is kind of challenging in the seated position. Let's see how I do. Let's save these scraps for veggie stock. For those of you who aren't saving your veggie scraps like this beautiful onion peel, you should do so. What we do is freeze them, and then when I have a huge amount, I will just make my own veggie stock and save tons of money instead of going out and buying veggie stock from the grocery store. Okay, go ahead and chop the onion pretty fine. It's whatever your preference is. I don't mind chunks of cooked onion in this sauce, so I'm not too careful. but I am going to dice it up pretty fine. Okay, 1 red pepper. Again, I'm gonna save the guts of this red pepper for my scrap bowl here, and I'll freeze it for veggie stock. Okay, onto the mushrooms. Again, just slice them up whatever way you like. On to the garlic. I'm gonna take like a handful of garlic. That's a lot, but I eat a lot of garlic, so get over it. Okay, that looks like a lot of garlic. I'm gonna use half that, okay? So that's like a couple of tablespoons of fresh garlic. We'll save that for later. Just eat it with a spoon. I'm kidding. How about some rosemary? I've also made this with parsley, with oregano. You can try out lots of different herbs, especially if you have them available or dry or whatever. I know that this has thyme, marjoram, rosemary, oregano, basil, savory, sage, and this is an Italian seasoning. So any of those that you have fresh or dry, you can just use that. I'm going to add a good tablespoon probably of crushed red pepper because I love it so much. Okay, let's get this fresh basil chopped up. I'm just gonna rough chop it up. Okay, and I'm gonna go ahead and grind some black pepper into the mix as well. Probably maybe about a half teaspoon. All right, so we're ready to put this thing all together. The hardest part is over, just chopping. And I've got this big pan that we're gonna be able to use for everything. So it's gonna be just a one pot, very simple marinara. Let's just dump all of this in together. Just give it a stir and then these mushrooms will start to release some liquid. If you do wanna add, maybe I'll add just a hair of veggie stock. Check this out. Yesterday I made a huge batch of veggie stock. It was probably like over 30 quarts of veggie stock, and I reduced it down. I just let it cook on medium-low for hours and hours and reduced it down to this thick syrup. And all I did was take a little, like maybe a half teaspoon or less, and I mixed it with a pint of water, and I have perfect veggie stock. Okay, just give this a stir, and all we're doing is gonna let this saute and just take your time. I've got it on like medium high, and we're just gonna get a nice cook going. When this is all ready, all I'm gonna do is add a quart of tomato sauce that I made myself and a quart of diced tomatoes that I also made myself. If you don't have home canned tomatoes, then you can just use 2 regular cans of tomato sauce and 2 regular cans of diced tomatoes. These particular ones do have added salt. I know that the grocery store usually does sell tomato sauce and diced tomatoes without any added salt, so try to use those if you can. But I like to use these homemade ones because, well, I made them myself and they taste a whole lot better. I will show you if you want to take it to the next level, I'll make a video where I make the diced tomatoes and the tomato sauce, the entire thing totally from scratch. It definitely takes a lot longer, which is why I like to make diced tomatoes and tomato sauce and then can it so I don't have to do that every time. I can just make 14 quarts at once and then I've got them for weeks. I've got enough, and all I have to do is crack these open and throw it together really quickly. So that's the benefit of canning these. If you don't have that, then yeah, it's very easy just to use canned. I will admit the canned does not taste as good. So if you want, chime in and I will make a whole video of where I do the diced tomatoes and the tomato sauce totally from scratch. It'll be a longer video, but it might be interesting if you're into that. It's looking nice. So let's do it. Let's add these tomatoes and put this baby together. So that's 1 quart of the diced tomatoes and 1 quart of sauce. Mix it all up. I might add, I think I will add 1 more jar of the sauce, which is the equivalent of 2 more small cans of sauce, and then let that reduce down. It's gonna look pretty liquidy when I add the other jar of sauce, but then I'm gonna let this cook down for more than an hour, and it should come together really nicely in the end. So now it's gonna reduce down and be even better. I like that. So that was the equivalent of 4 regular cans of sauce and 2 regular cans of diced tomatoes if you're using aluminum cans. And that's it. I'm just gonna let this heat up to a boil, and then I'm gonna turn it down immediately and just let it simmer on medium-low and reduce slowly, uncovered. I don't cover this at any point. Okay, we are at a bit of a boil here, so I've just turned it down, and I'm just gonna stir it occasionally and just let it slowly reduce, just bubbling and reducing. With this low pot, usually I do this in a higher pot so it doesn't splash so much. As it reduces, it's gonna start sputtering more because there's less liquid. So you might wanna use one of these handy splash guards. I think I got this one at IKEA. And just set it over top and it won't make such a mess of your countertop. Isn't that handy? And give it a stir once in a while. Well, that's all there is to it. You just let it reduce to the consistency that you like. If you like it really thick, let it go for quite a while. Just make sure your heat's really low because you don't want to scorch the bottom of your pot. As soon as you scorch it, your whole sauce is going to have a really burnt flavor to it that you cannot get rid of. So just be careful, let it simmer really slowly, be patient. And then what we do is we'll cook pasta like normal, and then I'll save some of that pasta water. Because we don't cook pasta with oil, if you let the noodles sit, they'll stick together. After we've strained the pasta, we'll put it back in the pot, we'll add a little bit of sauce, maybe a little bit of the starchy pasta water. That will cause the sauce to stick to the noodles, and it'll cause the noodles not to stick to one another. And then we'll just put pasta on a plate and add sauce on top. So I encourage you to try that little tip. That's all there is to this recipe. If you want me to make the in-depth version where I take whole tomatoes and dice and make sauce out of them, let me know and I'll do it. I love doing it that way because it is extremely delicious. And so that's it. I look forward to your comments in this video. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Join us in the Facebook group where we talk about all these different recipes. Everyone chimes in with their awesome recipes and we have a really fun time. So join us. Thanks for watching this video and I'll see you on the next one. We're gonna make veggie balls, so stay tuned. There they are, veggie balls.